Hey guys, my name's Eric, you're on youtube.com. Welcome to the operator tutorial. I've tried a couple attempts to make this exact video that you're about to watch, and I've done a couple takes that I wasn't really happy with. For today, what we're going to do, just to keep this video from getting overlong, over-boring, or too full of tangents to be informative, is we are going to look at every function on operator, look at all the buttons, all the knobs, and what they do. And I'm just going to explain operator and all the big ideas behind it, as well as I can, which might not be that good. And hopefully I will provide all my presets that I've been working on in the Gumroad, just like I do. You can unpack them and see what I've done behind the scenes, but hopefully right now I'm giving you the tools to break down presets you see and see what the components are doing. And in the future, I would love to do another video that talks more about the fun concepts and the sound design. But if you're ready for something that's a little in-depth and focused on the controls, let's do it. Alright, diving right in. On the left here, we have 4 synth voices for operator. Now each voice has its own envelope and its own oscillator, and as you click through them, you get to view all the different envelopes and all the different oscillators. If I make a change here, I have only changed voice D, and voices A through C stay the same. They are 4 disconnected, or not disconnected, they are connected, that's the whole point. But they are 4 theoretically independent voices. They can be used on their own, or they can be used to affect each other. But using this panel over here, you can affect the wave, the envelope, without affecting any of the others. And that's important. So, the oscillator is the module of the synthesizer that actually makes the noise. They come preloaded with many different waves built in for you. A sine wave being, of course, the simplest possible waveform. It's a single pitch with no harmonics. Saw, as you can see, we're firing on all the harmonics. The square wave, every other harmonic is alternated. And a triangle wave was interesting to me because I haven't seen it laid out in this way. But it's also worth remembering that this, I always think of them as the stops on the organ. This is a very unnatural way to view harmonics on an instrument. There's really not a physical instrument that allows you to adjust the fundamental and the harmonics in quite this way. You kind of need synthesis as a tool to control sounds on such a granular way. So you can also make your own user waveform, and by doing that you get to use these, I think of them as drawbars on an organ, but you get to bring them up. The lowest one is your fundamental pitch. If you want a sine wave, just bring up the lowest one and you're done. And then each additional stop is an additional harmonic, making the waveform more and more complex. And if we were to chart out, say, an actual guitar note or bowed note on a cello, or a snare drum in this way, on this chart, it would be hopelessly complex. But for now, let's just think of it as an oscillator on a synthesizer. And let's leave this a sine wave for now, for all we're doing. Now feedback, you can feed the waveform back into itself to have it modify itself. Let me show you how that sounds. Some of you may remember from the Kalimba effects rack. Now, I went a little experimental with that effects rack, but it has two effects chains that can feed back into each other. When we feed signal back into itself, we do get certain distortions, and you'll be able to hear that very clearly. Let's see, what else can we feed back? It sort of degrades the sound in a very specific way. You can also have the feedback repeat in such a way. You can adjust the phase of the waveform, which is only important in very specific scenarios. I'm going to do a video on phase cancellation someday, so I don't want to talk too much about phase. But phase is where in the waveform it starts. So by default, it starts at, let's think of this point in the middle as 0, and then it goes up to 1, then it hits 0 again, cycles down to -1, cycles back to 0. I hope that's easy to picture. I really should have done a chart of some sort. Now, if I want, I can have it start on 1 instead of 0. And you might be thinking, how's that going to sound? Well, let's hear. There's a C major chord that starts at 0. And now here is a C major chord that starts at 1. Now you might be thinking, those sound exactly the same. And you're correct. This waveform oscillates too quickly for us to really hear the phase. But if there was another waveform oscillating the exact same, but with a different phase, perhaps an exactly opposite phase, now are we hearing it? So, the phase is going to affect how the waveforms interact with each other. And I have a phase silencer effect rack that I use sometimes that I will have to show off in a video about phase in the future. And now, oscillator to velocity and Q. Q is the quality factor, and oscillator to velocity, I believe, yes. So that just allows the oscillator to be affected by the velocity at which you play the keys. Interesting. I see how that could be used for percussion sound design. Now, here's our envelope. Some of you may be familiar with the term ADSR, or envelope. ADSR is attack, decay, sustain, and release. To me, attack, decay, and release are of one ilk. Attack is the initial hit. If you play guitar, maybe that's the pick hitting the string. Decay is the transportation from attack to release, and release is that final echoing out of the note. So attack is the bow being pulled against the string of the cello. Decay is that string resonating itself, and release is what happens when you lift the bow up from the cello. Now what's sustain? Sustain is how loud it is while you're holding down the note. You can put no sustain, and then it will simply go from attack to release. Now in this, no matter how long I hold the key, one sec. What's going on here? If sustain is at 0, you should just get a percussive hit. No matter how long you hold the key, you will experience sorry, I had a second oscillator active and was confusing myself. Now let me demonstrate again. Perhaps I'll put a MIDI monitor just to keep me honest so you know exactly what I'm doing. Boom. Now, with the envelope like this, and no sustain, the note will not hold as I'm playing, but if I put the sustain here, the note starts at this initial volume, right here, and then decreases into sustain, and when I let sustain go, it is released. Let's do... Perfect. Let me turn the volume up a little. And you can adjust the velocity. You can say how much this is affected by the key press. You can say how much velocity you want to go into the time of this envelope. So right now, the harder I press a key, the faster the note will move through this envelope. You can adjust the initial. So if you do a long faded in note, like for example for a synth pad, maybe you don't want to start that at negative infinity, at absolute nothing. Maybe you want to start that. And that's always kind of a pet peeve of mine when I want to build up a long attack, but I can't adjust the initial to get it where I want. I know it sounds stupid, but when you're looking to dial your attack in just right, and what you need is a long attack, and you get a lot of nothing at the beginning, that can be an annoying thing. Alright. Additionally, we have loop. There are 4 loop modes, and I'd encourage you to play with them on your own. The first one is time. Now time is completely disconnected from anything but itself. Time only cares how many milliseconds it's been since this chord was played. And it can sound super groovy on its own, but the second you bring in a click, and I'm sure you're already thinking, well, there are spots where that can be useful, and 100% there are. In fact, I find myself making a lot of presets using the time loop mode. I think it's so cool. But if you want something that's a little bit more to the grid, you can do beat. And now beat relies on you to play on time. You can play out of time just as easily in beat mode. I believe sync fixes that problem. Yep, there it is. So beat and sync seem very similar, but beat is when you want it on the tempo, but not necessarily on the beat. Sync is when you want it on the beat. And then trigger. Trigger, it loops when it is triggered, and I understand that, but I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, because to my ear it sounds a lot like none. I believe that trigger is that the envelope will repeat every time you play a new note, whereas with none, if I start playing this note and then hit a second note, it kind of jumps in on the pre-existing envelope. Let me try to demonstrate that. So, for example, if I have this long attack, but I'm already through the attack in the sustain, no, that's not correct. I'm wrong. Your homework is to Google what trigger mode does, and in the comments let me know that I'm a dunce and I've muffed it all up. Trigger might be a latch. Trigger might hold the note that you've played down until you play the next note. That's interesting. Sorry, you caught me lacking. Now, let's talk about things I do know about, because I feel like I've spent too long already in the envelope section. So of these four voices, you can fix any one of them or all of them. When they're fixed, they go into this mode where you tune the frequency, and it doesn't matter what key you hit, they're all going to be the same frequency. Let me bring this to a more normal ADSR for me. Now, people use fixed mode a lot for percussion sound design. I think it's very good for that purpose. There are other uses for it. To talk briefly, now I'm going a little bit more in a sound design tangent, but forgive me. If we route this up so that B goes into A, and we fix B, what we've got right now is a very good ring modulator. maybe one that I like more than the one built into Ableton's shifter. It's just so simple to use and it's right in the synth. And there are lots of cool things you can do with that. If I ever do my sound design video, I will show more of the ring modulation off. You can also turn it into a homemade flanger, which I did on one of our presets, and I think that's just a blast. Without getting too deeply into it, ring modulation and frequency modulation are kind of similar. They're both sound design tools, they're both methods of synthesis. Frequency modulation is the principle that operator works off of, where each of these oscillators can interact with and modulate each other as we go through the algorithms. This is the nothing modulates anything and all four are outputs mode. But over here, everything trickles down through the next oscillator and finally comes out the output of A. And I sometimes think of frequency modulation as the signal starts all the way up here in D, works its way through C, like water coming down a rain pipe, right? And if, for example, if B is all the way off, then even though D and C are working their hardest, the pipe is blocked. They can't get through B without B being turned up, because that's how this algorithm is routed. But there are all sorts of different pathways that the pipes can form. For example, here, D and C are independent, but both flow into B, which then again flows into A. Here, D goes straight into A, but C still can't get into A without going through B. So each one of these is just a different pathway for your audio to go through, where it goes through each of these channels, and then finally outputs wherever it's allowed to output. I hope that that is not too complicated. In frequency modulation, the waveforms modulate or change each other. So B is a triangle wave, A is a sine wave, and when I let them modulate each other, that is a combination of a sine and a triangle wave. Let me pull up. I try to only use free plugins on this channel, and this is no exception. Scope is completely free by Unplugred. You can purchase it if you have money. I have not because I am broke. So here's your sine wave, right? Here's your perfect sine wave. Now, here's your triangle. Why is that like that? Let's reset all of this. Oh, because it's in trigger mode. And let's reduce the amplitude to make it more visible. This is not frequency modulated. This is what the oscilloscope interprets from the two of them playing at the same time. This is them frequency modulated. This is them frequency modulated. I've been playing the same note this whole time, but those are those waveforms laid over each other and interpolated. And frequency modulator synthesis is a way to make some of the prettiest, most beautiful sounds you've ever heard, and also some of the most harsh, ugly, unlistenable sounds. And in this video, you're probably going to hear more of the second category, if I'm being completely honest. Now, let's talk about the coarse knob. The coarse knob runs up the harmonic series, so root, octave, fifth, octave, third, etc., for 48 intervals. It might be worth looking up the harmonic series. I don't want to get too hard into music theory in this video. This is a sound design video, but it's helpful stuff. It really is. So, I find that the further up here I get, the more shrill it sounds. That makes perfect sense, because if 1 to 2 is already an octave, and then 1 to 4 is already 2 octaves, by the time we get up to 48... Now, I don't know the harmonic series that far, I don't have that memorized, but that's gotta be up there, yeah? Dog whistle tone. But it's a tool that's in your toolkit, and I'd rather have more options on the coarse knob that I'm not going to use than less and wish I could go further. The one thing is, the 1/2 is great. I use the 1/2 a lot. I wish there were more subharmonics. Now, the fine tune isn't on any sort of scale. It's not on the harmonic series. It's not even semitones. It's a fine-tuning knob. Now, we've got all 4 of our voices figured out. Sorry, it's already almost 30 minutes into the video. I said this one wasn't going to be long and boring. Alright, forgive me. But I am going to get through this. Now, the LFO. An LFO is a low-frequency oscillator. Now, what that means is, just like these oscillators, how they create this sine wave, it is creating, right now, also a sine wave, but it can create all these waveforms. The difference is that a low-frequency oscillator moves so slowly that you can't hear it. So what use does it have? Well, it's a modulator, and remember, to modulate is to change, and by routing it to different sources, we can have this slow-moving, invisible hand turn knobs for us. I'm going to leave it set to A, I'm going to turn the amount high, and I'm going to turn the rate to a sort of medium place, and what you're going to hear is that it is going to modulate the pitch of A and create a vibrato effect. It's probably going to be a very fast, jarring vibrato effect. I can't even see you because this is a pre-recorded video, but I feel like, for those of you still watching the video, I feel like the gears are turning in your brain. All the things you can do with a little hand that turns the knobs for you. Let's see. We have all these routing sources that we can send it to. And they're all good options, and I'd encourage you to route it to all of them in your own time. But right now, since we've got B going into A, let's have it go to the volume of B. And what you're going to notice is that I turned it all the way to -100 because the volume's already maxed out, so I don't want it to turn the volume up, I want it to turn the volume down. You can adjust these knobs as you see fit. You can make it so it only does minus 20%, something like that. You can use this LFO in tandem with these. If this one's all the way to 100 and this one's all the way to negative 100, then it's decreasing this while it increases this. You can have them interact in these ways, and you can sort of expand it to make this one LFO feel more like a modulation matrix. I'm quite partial to, say, the modulation matrix that's built into Wavetable, but do remember that in Ableton, one of your superpowers is all the access to different modulators you have. So if this LFO isn't enough for you, you can always rig up a second LFO. Low is a slow-moving LFO. High is a fast-moving LFO. Sync is an LFO that is synced to the tempo that you set. So 2 whole notes, 1 half note, a 16th note. It'll now move at that pace. Oh, and retrigger is whether the LFO starts again every time you hit the note, or whether the LFO is always silently moving in the background. Now, I think you get a lot more natural a sound often from leaving the retrigger off and letting the LFO be sort of an independent voice that interacts with the other voices in interesting ways, but there's plenty of room for both in your music. Also, the LFO has an envelope of its own. Remember, the LFO is essentially just another voice. It's just one we can't hear. If you have it fade in, the LFO could, for example, be affecting the pitch of A, but we could have it fade in so slow that you don't even really notice it's affecting the pitch until it reaches further in the note's iteration. We can have the notes start at one pitch and then sort of start vibratoing more. If we imagine our cello player, he hits his note, he draws the bow, and slowly he begins to vibrato it and breathe life into the note. I shouldn't have used that cello player example before playing a sine wave modified by a triangle wave at you. It sounds a little bit more harsh than a cello player, doesn't it? You can adjust the initial, you can adjust the attack, the decay, the release, the sustain. You can move the peak. You can move the end. You can also have it so velocity makes you go through this quicker or slower. You also can connect that to the ever-powerful time setting. And this one loops just like the other ones if you'd like it to. This one, the LFO, the amount, and the rate can be mapped to velocity. Wherever we map something to velocity, the harder you hit the key, the more you're going to get from it. Destination A can be routed to any of the voices you like, or all of them, as well as the filter, if you want. Destination B, you can control where you route it. Now, the filter. I hope everybody knows what a filter is. If you don't, this is not the video where I explain filters. But the filter has a lot of modes. It has a low pass, which lets every frequency below it through, a high pass, which lets every frequency above it through, a band pass, which focuses in on the band that it's in, that you center it around, like 1,000, and cuts out everything above and everything below, only allowing one frequency band to pass. A notch, which is the evil twin of the band pass, and only seeks to cut out that frequency band. And this one is morphable and can go through all all of those various types to kind of try and turn your filter into two filters. What I wouldn't give for two filters, am I right? But again, we have a tool for that, and it is called an EQ. It's just, you know, you get so used to wavetable or drift having two filters, so you can place a high pass and a low pass, that this feels less powerful because of that. But it really is doing good work. The two modes are 12 decibels per octave and 24 decibels per octave. That just controls how quickly the drop-off is. Resonance is very important. These old analog filters that everybody likes copying would have a little volume boost right before the cut. And so we imitate that still in our digital technology. And when tweaked just right, that resonance knob can work some magic, especially if you want to put a slow-moving LFO on it. And these are flavors for the filter. They're tonal changes. Each of them drives the filter, or gives you the option to drive the filter. These are different types of drive. And they impart different characters on the filter. Some of them subtle, some of them definitely not. Although when you crank it up to 24 decibels, it shouldn't be subtle. Additionally, you have a shaper. The shaper is essentially the flavor of the drive or the distortion. Even clean, you can shape it. And you get a sort of harsh digital clip. And then there's, of course, a dry wet, which is great because you probably don't want 100% distorted unless you're going for something very specific. Frequency to velocity, this is the harder you hit the note, will affect the frequency of the filter. That's cool. Frequency to key, what note you're hitting is going to affect the frequency of the filter. The filter has its own envelope, which is peachy keen. The amplitude of the envelope represents where the filter sits, is my understanding. And this can be looped just like all your other envelopes. So here we have the pitch envelope. The pitch envelope is how the pitch moves throughout the duration of the note. This envelope is the only one that has these slope controls, which are super cool. Instead of just moving these blocks around and then living with where they sit, you can adjust the slopes between them to get different curves, slide up into the note, slide down into the note, have a straight line fade between. Very cool stuff. The peak, the sustain, the initial, they are all represented by pitches. And wherever those pitches sit, that's going to be where the note wants to be. So right now it's going to start an octave above and slide down to where we want it. And you can get crazy with this. You can have it start 4 octaves above. You can have, just right at the end, it jump up 4 octaves. Do remember, with all these envelopes, that they're going to be affected by the envelope of your voice. They're only coming out through that voice. You can route the pitch envelope to sources. For example, I could only have the modulating voice of B be affected by the pitch envelope. You can loop this if you want. You can set it to glide or not to glide. You can also set a destination for the pitch envelope and treat it like another modulator. So like, for example, the LFO rate will be cranked right at the beginning, will settle into a more neutral place, and then it'll be cranked at the end. Yeah, would be more obvious on a sound that had more release. See how easy it is to get weird, mangled sounds with frequency modular synthesis? You can also just quickly reverse your pitch envelope if that's what you want. You can adjust it like this. You can set it to neutral if you don't want it to hurt anything, but you're using it as a modulator. Adjusting the spread will slightly detune it between the left and the right to create a more stereo effect. See how the waves, there are two waves and they're different from each other now? It's just affecting the phase and the pitch slightly to sort of stereoize your sound. And transpose will turn the whole thing up or down by the amount of steps that you set it. Now, I feel like this video has already gone on for maybe longer than it should, but there's so much operator to cover. Here are your algorithms. I feel like I've already explained these, maybe not clearly enough. Voices that are laid over top of each other are modulating down from top to bottom. Voices that are laid next to each other are not interacting with each other. Here, blue is above cyan into yellow, and red goes straight into yellow. Here, red goes into both cyan and blue into yellow. One thing that is super fun to do, even if you don't understand the algorithms very well, is once you've got a sound that you like, you can run it through each and every one just to see how they sound when put together. When you stack your building blocks in different ways, you get different results, and sometimes it's a fun way to turn your preset into 3 or 4 or 5 good presets. Here is a little bit of routing for you. You can set velocity to whatever 2 things you want, in addition to all the other places you could map velocity. You can set the key to whatever you want. It's already routed to time if you want to adjust time based on key. This time knob controls just massively for the whole synth the speed of the LFOs, the speed of all the envelopes. So it can be a very powerful knob. If you take your preset that you like and turn the time knob up and then down real slow, you'll get a lot of variations of that sound by doing that. Aftertouch, if your MIDI has aftertouch, it can be routed to things. Pitch bend obviously starts routed to pitch, and mod wheel starts routed to nothing, but you can route it wherever you like. You can select how many voices you want. This is how many notes you're allowed to press down. So if you want a monophonic synth, our sound is so goofy. I'm gonna grab a new operator. I'm sorry that I'm distracted, but I just don't know what to do with the boyoyoing that we've ended up with. I know, it's my fault, right? Because I'm the teacher. So if you want, now you can hold down 20 notes and they'll all play at once. Now, if you hold down 2 notes, you'll only hear one of them. There's also retrigger. There's interpolate. And anti-alias, which both affect the quality of the sound internally. They're both digital processes that I don't want to get too deep into, but think of them as tonal variations. Try them on, try them off, decide what you like. Pan, set neutrally to start. You can also, of course, adjust the pan right here if you want to, but it has a built-in pan that you can use. You can also set the pan to be affected by key, or the pan to be affected by a random signal. Nothing else can be modulated by random, but we have some sort of random number generator in here for the panning, which is fun. I sometimes like putting pan to key, especially for piano or keyboard type presets. Oftentimes you will hear two mics on a piano and panned hard left and hard right, so sometimes it sounds really good. Sometimes it feels really good. The tone knob, if you turn it up more, you'll get more brightness. If you turn it down more, you'll get less brightness. The volume is exactly what it sounds like. Now, we are officially through operator. Obviously, there are a lot of things you can do with operator, but I feel like I've taken up so much of your time already that I'm going to link to the Gumtree below. I'm going to make all these presets freely available like always. Feel free to donate if you want to buy me a coffee, but please, these are presets made with a free synthesizer for a DAW you already own. I haven't particularly built anything. Please feel free to just download these and use them and make music with them. Please comment any questions you have. Please give me a like if you enjoyed the video or if you found it helpful. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next lesson. Have a great day, and now get off YouTube and go make some music. Peace.